I am making today a baked stuffed lobster, or some people call it a broiled stuffed lobster, but I'm not really going to cook it on broil. It's a little bit too hot, so I'm going to call it a baked stuffed lobster. It's really simple to make. You just need a few lobsters. Usually you get a larger size lobster to do this. Like, you don't have to buy huge lobsters because those aren't necessarily the best ones, but a larger size lobster. What I do here is when I make the lobster in this way is that I get the lobster, I get the live lobster, and I cook it a little less, like not a whole lot less, like a couple minutes, 2-3 minutes less than what I would normally cook it. Always in very well salted water. When we cook lobster here at home in a pot that holds maybe 20 lobsters, there's at least 3/4 to 1 cup of salt in the water. You really need lobster to be very well salted, otherwise it tastes bland. If ever you've tasted under-salted lobster, you would know it has no taste, it has no flavor to it. So you got to be careful and really make sure that your lobster is well salted. So if you're getting live lobster, just cook it a couple minutes less than you usually would. You're starting off with cooked lobster. And after that, it's just about stuffing it with a few key ingredients. And really you can play around with these ingredients. You can, if you like onions, you can put onions. If you like garlic, you can put garlic. So it's all going to depend on what flavors that you're looking for. I try to keep it simple on the different flavors. Like, I wouldn't add a lot of different spices to it, but like I say, it's all a question of taste. So if you like these different spices, but you don't want to completely mask the lobster flavor, you still want to be able to get that nice lobster flavor. But like I say, play it up any way you want. I'm going to show you how I do it, but feel free to mix it up a little bit and change around the ingredients. The first thing that we need to do is we need to take the lobsters and split them open. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So the way that you're going to want to do this, you're going to lay your lobster out on the back. And I'm lucky because these are fall lobsters, so the shells are going to be a little bit easier to cut through. If this were spring lobster, I'd be really struggling cutting this. But because these lobsters are in the fall, they've gone through their molting. The lobster shell is not as hard as it is in the spring, so I will be able to do this. One thing you need to be really careful, the most important part of cutting through these lobsters is to make sure to not cut all the way through the back shell, because you don't want to split this shell here, because if you cut through the shell right through, all your juices are going to leak out of the lobster and you're going to lose a lot of your flavor. So go deep inside the lobster, just don't cut through the shell. Basically, that's the one most important rule. So you're going to start it with a sharp knife. Now, if you don't like the body of the lobster and you want to just do the tails, that's fine. But I'm going to give you a little suggestion, is that if you don't like the body of the lobster, so the lobster tamale, and you only really want to have a stuffed tail, I think I would leave the body on just the same, because if you break it off, the juices are going to run out from the lobster tail and maybe make it a little bit drier. So maybe leave the body on for the cooking process and then remove it afterwards if you don't like it. But it really does make a nice presentation when you do leave the body on. So now you just take a sharp knife, be really careful, and just gently kind of break through the shell without going through the back. And be careful, you want to open it up a little bit, but just, once again, don't crack the back. And you'll see that the cavity is really pretty deep in there, like it goes pretty deep. So you can get a lot of stuffing in there. If you can see, you can really get a lot of good stuffing in there. So it goes pretty deep in, and even if you don't like the tamale that's in the body, that's okay. The stuffing gets a really good lobster flavor, and you can just eat the stuffing and the lobster. That'll be all around in there. So the body is cut. So now I'm going to go down the tail, and this is a male. I don't know if you know how to tell the difference, but a male, this part is hard, and if you have a female lobster, this part is soft. And I think I have all male from what my husband said. Yeah, that one's a male. And that one's a male. No females, to show you the difference. So same thing, make your way down the tail, watch your hands, and don't go through the back. Just try to cut as close as you can to the middle, and I'm going to explain why after. I'm just going to start by cutting the shell before going to the top shell before going a little bit deeper. Just that way I'll be able to control it more. And so you can kind of open it up a little bit, but like I say, don't crack the back of the tail. And what I do to be able to gain better access to the tail is I will break off little pieces of this top part here, because if you've never cleaned lobster before, there's like a dark strip down the middle of the tail that you kind of want to clean out, because it's basically the lobster's digestive system, I guess. So you don't want to leave that there. It's really unappealing. And the reason why I also do this is because I'll be able to get in a little bit more of the stuffing all along inside the tail as well by breaking off a little bit of these pieces here on top. It's really not hard to break. Fairly clean, unless I really didn't cut it right in the right place, but because I can see right at the end of the tail here the little dark strip. I don't know if you can see it. So that's what I want to clean out of the tail, because it's not very appealing. So it's really deep down. I'm going to take like just a plain butter knife to really get in there and clean that out. And if you're really careful, sometimes you can just pull that out almost like in clean strips. So it's really not very appealing to eat that part. I want to say that this lobster only had some like right at the end. If I dig down, I'm not pulling out, seeing any more of that black. I'm just going to go right underneath, right down all the way to the bottom where the shell is, and I'm not seeing any more. So that's good. One thing that you always want to do when you've got your lobster like this on is to leave it always on the back, because when you're cooking your lobster in your water or when you're buying it, lobster is really juicy. So if you cut it open like this and then flip it over, all of the juices are going to kind of seep out. So once you've got this cut, really all that's left to do is to stuff it. So like I said, I just use really simple ingredients to stuff the body. So I'm going to start with the crackers. So I just use a plain saltine cracker. That's all I use. I don't use any kind of fancy crackers. I just buy a plain saltine cracker. And then I start and I open this up and I stuff this with as many crackers as I can get in. I mess it in, I push it in, I shove it in. You want to get as much of the stuffing in there as you can. The more stuffing, the better. You can't overstuff it, because the rest of what you put in really is just spices and a little bit of flavor in there. So I filled this up with crackers. So now what I do is in this one, I'm going to add, I crushed some fresh pepper, so I'm going to sprinkle on some pepper, and I have no amounts. It's basically just sprinkling. I am going to sprinkle a little bit of salt. And you can do this with lobster that you've purchased at your fish market or at your wherever it is that you get your lobster. This can be done very simply as well. So in this one, I'm going to be adding some garlic. And now I'm not done yet, but I'm just going to move over to the tail for a second to get all this stuffing in the tail. And as you can see, I didn't crush my crackers into a fine powder. It's nice when you can get a stuffing with a little bit of substance to it. So you want it small enough that you can stuff in there, but not a complete powder either. So that when you eat it, you get a nice stuffing. Make sure to really get that stuffing in there. So we're going to add some fresh pepper, sprinkle of salt, a little bit more garlic. So now this is the important part. So the last thing you're going to put on top of your lobster is very generous pats or globs or whatever you want to call them of butter. And when I say generous, like, you got to be really generous, because think of this, it's going to be going in the oven, and this butter is going to be what's going to be melting inside of those crackers with all that garlic or spices that you've put in there, really creating a nice, juicy, flavorful stuffing inside of your lobster. I don't use unsalted butter. I use what I have on hand. So like you can see, I'm really generous with the butter. And that's it. That is how I stuff my lobster. The next step after the lobster is all stuffed is you're going to take your lobster, always leaving it turned on its back, and you're going to place it on a heavy piece of aluminum foil, and you're just going to wrap it up in the foil. Kind of be gentle, because you know there's like little prickly things on the legs of the lobster. Try not to tear your foil paper underneath, because all of the juices will run out. I mean, some of the juice will run out of the lobster, but you don't want it to run out of the foil either. If it stays inside the foil, it'll still be steaming and all that butter and garlic and goodness. So basically you just wrap your lobster. And what I'm going to do is, because I want a really nice tight seal, because I want this to steam, is I'm going to take a whole other piece of aluminum foil and wrap this entire thing in it again, just to make sure that I get a good nice seal. So I'm going to put this on a cookie sheet and make my way and do the rest of the two other lobsters. Once you have all your lobsters prepared, I lay them out in a cookie sheet, and all that's left to do is to bake them. So you want to bake these at 450 degrees Fahrenheit for around 30 minutes. So you want to give them a good 30 minutes, and then lower your heat down to 400 for another 10-15 minutes. You're going to notice one thing while this is cooking in the oven. It doesn't smell very good. It's the heating of the lobster shell that really gives off a very unpleasant odor, but don't worry about it. They're not burning. They're gonna be fine. It's just that the lobster shell really has a distinct odor when it's heated up. So all that's left to do is we're gonna pop this in the oven. Let's have a look to see how the lobster turned out. It's steaming. I am going to sprinkle on top a little bit of Parmesan cheese. And if I had some fresh parsley, I'd put some fresh parsley, but I don't. So I'm going to just sprinkle a little bit of dried parsley on top, just to make it a little prettier. And there you have it. There's different ways that you can serve this. You can serve it with just some nice crusty bread and some garlic butter on top or regular butter on top. You can serve this with side salads. You can serve it just alone and kind of picking at it and a glass of wine, really enjoying your lobster. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Share the videos on your social media if you'd like. And be sure to check back again soon.